That's just one of the many benefits that come by just God's guidance without, way apart from any wisdom that we might have. And I love that part of my work. Packing up the old kit bag. Packing up my troubles there. Just leave that. The summer of '58. I was supposed to come home. I'd been there 6.5 years by that time. I hadn't been home. And so I came home, and it was just spent time with my dad and with the Bells family. But then I decided in the summer of '59 that I would want to do some graduate work in nursing and just work in a hospital, and I was all set to go to University of Iowa. That's where I'd graduate. So, but they wouldn't take me mid-semester. I would have had to wait till fall, and I thought by that time I'd be going back to the Middle East. So instead I thought, well, I have a lot of friends in St. Louis, because Covenant Seminary had started in St. Louis and the college by that time. Oh, here we're coming. Oh, these are good pictures. Dr. Rayburn asked me to be Dean of Women at Covenant College, and I'd never been a Dean of Women. So I accepted. I said, yeah, I'll come, but I'm only going to stay. I'll be there just 1 year, and then I'm going back to the Middle East. And so I had known Rudy. He's just kind of part of the Bells family in Iowa. And he was in St. Louis, but that isn't the reason I went there. But he would ask me to go to the symphony, and then he'd pick me up for church on Sunday. Oh, and meanwhile, I began my master's degree at Washington U, because they had a stipend for graduate nurses, and I didn't have to pay anything, and actually got paid about $150 a month, which Dr. Rayburn thought was great, because then they didn't have to pay me at the college. The college had no extra money, I can tell you. On this page, she says, qualifications to date Collyn Franzenberg, and then she has pictures of Rudy. Smart, own a car and look cool leaning on it, likes to travel, because we traveled a lot. One time the Rayburns invited me over for dinner with them, and there was a man that's teaching at the college, and they asked, could you come to dinner and with this gentleman? I think they were tired of waiting on Rudy, and they were kind of pushing it. And I thought, I'm too old to be coy, so I said, Rudy, would it make any difference to you if I went out for dinner with this gentleman? He said, it would make me just sick. So I thought, boy, I'm making progress. Here, good sense of humor, tall. See, these are all qualifications for me to marry Rudy. She made these up, kind of. Have hair, handsome, because he did have a little hair then. Fun-loving, Scrabble counts, and he was good at it. Keeps his room clean, and he did. He's very tidy, as you can see from these pictures. So anyway, then we got married in June of 1961. We were married at Kono. We didn't send out invitations. I put a notice on the bulletin board in in the college, and we thought we would come, and about 40 or 50 people came from St. Louis, and Dr. Rayburn and Mr. Max Bells performed the ceremony. My dad even gave me away, so it was all, I didn't have any money. I didn't have enough for flowers even. I bought some carnations and stuck a few up in front and had a war gardenia. We didn't have a photographer. So there we are, and here are our wedding pictures. This is it. You can see we didn't spend much money on them. And here we are signing our wedding license. Here we are here are the carnations I bought. That's all we had, all the flowers. We didn't even have a wedding cake. One of my friends said, Collyn, that's the first non-traditional wedding I've ever been to. We didn't have a cake, we didn't have the wedding march. And I didn't even know we were non-traditional. We just were getting married. That's Nat Bell's, and that's my dad. He was very happy about our marriage because Rudy was German. As a matter of fact, Rudy grew up in a German home, a German town, spoke only German until he was 5 years old. So he pleased Dad mightily. We spent very little money. My sister baked little cinnamon rolls, and we had punch and rolls and cookies and cake, but no ready cake. And then we had a honeymoon, though, which I recommend for everybody. We went to New England. We had a wonderful time. We thoroughly enjoyed New England together and went to a lot of historic places like Plymouth Rock and many, many places. I'm ironing things that I don't very often iron because we don't iron much anymore. But there comes a time when at least you have to press a few things, and that's what I'm doing now. I haven't worn these all winter because they haven't been ironed. And so here they are. And we ironed everything when I was growing up. I mean, by everything. My dad and my uncle and my brother all wore shirts to work in the meat market, in the butcher shop, that had to be washed and starched and ironed. And we didn't have the fabrics, of course, that they have today. And certainly nobody wore knit shirts. The things we learned when we were small to enjoy housework and counted important, we'd have kind of contests to see who could get the most chairs dusted the fast and things like that. But I think that really carried over into my adult life. I know it did. Nursing, of course, requires a certain amount of housekeeping. I think it's very important. I think girls should, and men too, should learn how to do these things because it makes a happy home. And so I'm a really a big advocate of housekeeping, as I've proven in my last years of work at the college. I worked in housekeeping, and everybody said I was kind of crabby. Not too crabby, I don't think. And then at the college, I was Dean of Women, Associate Dean of Students. Then I was Director of Financial Aid for 4 years. And all through that time, I complained a lot about the housekeeping at Covenant. So then they asked me if I wanted to be the supervisor. And I didn't want to be, but I said I'd work in there. So I did. I was assistant. That was the end of my career at Covenant, was working in housekeeping. And one of the professors used to come down and call me, and he'd say, what are you doing in here? You've got your master's degree in nursing. What are you doing in housekeeping? Those were my last years, I think. I worked quite a few years, actually, in housekeeping. And I think I helped some. I don't think I was as good as Carol Collier. She was a better teacher. I didn't really like to teach it to kids, but I had to. I had to show them ways to do things. I do feel, I'm not putting on, I feel very strongly about the importance of a woman enjoying making a nice home. When I started working at Covenant, which was in '59, everybody did everything. And I mean, I was nurse, I was dorm mother, as they called me. I just did everything. Helped with all the social events. We as a college were much more in loci parenti than we can be now, even legally. but we just could run the students' lives, and the parents expected us to. For instance, one mother called me once and wanted me to break off a relationship that her daughter had with a guy she didn't like. By the way, later on the girl married that guy, and it turned out to be a very happy situation. But anyway, and I went to Dr. Rayburn and I said, do I have to do this? And he said, you keep your nose out of that kind of thing. So it wasn't really a college policy to break up a relationship. But the college itself then, when we moved to Lookout Mountain from St. Louis, it was a mess. And we walked in the lobby, the ones who came down on kind of an exploratory trip, which included Dr. Buzzwell. But the whole lobby was, all the furniture was draped with some kind of sheets. The kitchen was full of grease, and the people had just left things the way they were. And the offices were full of papers. They had just dumped files, and so they were just... So it was a big clutter. Don Grimm came in 1972, and he kind of stirred things up in the dean's office. He came as dean of students, and I was dean of women, and Jim Conrad, I think, or Jim Cox, they were both at one time dean of men. Hello? You must be out for a walk. The Grimms and the Schmidts every fall entertained all of the new freshman class for tacos. And at that time, I think there were about 90. I remember thinking that we'd have about 30 at a time. And we would do the tacos, and the kids would come down. And that was a lot of kids. Even now, they come to me and say, oh, I remember. Now their children are here. When I was a sophomore in high school, my mother became very ill, and I can remember it all so clearly. We were in January, we were at home, and she said, oh, girls, I am so sick. So she went to the hospital, and they found out she had pancreatic cancer, and she lived until April. We were kind of made to be stoic, I think, almost maybe too much. Probably if we had been a little more emotional about things, it would have been better. But that was the first time I'd ever, or probably the second time I'd ever really thought about death. And so I don't know what we thought was happening after death. I mean, it was just, everybody just knew that death was final. But then I became a Christian the year I graduated from college. And I have wonderful experiences from then on. I mean, I was at the University of Iowa, and on Easter Sunday, I went out to we had a sunrise service, and we sang, He lives, and I can remember that was just thrilling to me to know that Jesus lived, and I knew that there was a resurrection after death. And so from then on, I mean, death has not been overwhelming. I mean, it's been the lonesomeness of missing, especially Rudy, but it hasn't been devastating in my life. In a way, I think heaven seems more real to me now than this life.